Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore. Saving seniors thousands. That's a great opportunity. We'd love to do that. Well, how can we do that? Well, there is one way that you may not know about. And here to tell us about that one way, his background, and some examples of how he has saved people lots of money is my friend Phil Giordano. Phil, how you doing today?
Good. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good, thank you. Obviously, we'd love to save seniors thousands of dollars.
Sure.
And you're in a business that not a lot of people know about.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Sure. Our business, it's called Life Settlements. And just like you said, not a lot of people do know about it. And essentially what it is it's the sale of an existing life insurance policy for an amount in excess of any cash in that policy. And this year, I'm so glad you're having us on, because this year, we're actually going on 17 years of being in business. Wow. This December, right now. And in spite of that fact, and feeling like I've been in the industry forever, as I'm out and about talking to, definitely with the general public, but even among advisors, so little people still know about this option or know very little about this option. So it's just really important to just create additional awareness. So I'm very grateful to be on here just to share some of that.
No, absolutely. How did you get involved in this business?
Yeah, I started off actually on what's called the buying side of the life settlement industry, in which the funders are purchasing existing life insurance policies. I started off there, worked for 2 years, and then in 2006, I started our business, SFS Life Settlements, on the brokering side of the business, in which we provide exclusive representation for policy owners.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about some of the nuts and bolts of how this works.
Sure, exactly. Typically, the majority of the people that would consider a life settlement are people that are 65 plus years old. They have a policy of about $100,000 in face value or greater. And they're in a situation where they're not sure they need the policy any longer. They don't want to pay premiums any further. Sometimes it could be situations for like estate planning purposes where they have too much insurance and they're like, we don't need this extra policy anymore. Let's just keep this one. So there's multiple reasons why someone might consider it. So typically we are working with a client, but oftentimes they come through an advisor. So we are oftentimes the additional resource for the advisor to help them navigate this process. And they come to us with an existing client in one of those situations, and they provide us some detailed information, and we evaluate it and determine whether or not it even makes sense to consider a life settlement. Typically, it would be what's called in life insurance, there's a life insurance illustration, which is a projection of the values of the policy. And with that basic information, we can help determine if a life settlement might make sense.
Got it.
But the thing to keep in mind, obviously, is what is the objective of the client with the life insurance policy? Are they going to need this policy any longer in the future? Or is the life settlement going to be the right choice for them? And so by evaluating it, we can help them determine what that present value of the policy is and if a life settlement makes sense.
What would you say is the percentage of people that you initially meet with that it makes sense for to do something like this?
Yeah, it can make sense for them to consider. A lot of people consider and want to sell their life insurance policy, but candidly, not a lot of policies work. They have to have the right makeup as far as the type of policy it is, and based on their age and health are the primary factors that we look into to determine if it's probable. But typically, there are once people know about this option, there's a lot of interest in it. But there's also a lot of reasons why people should keep their life insurance policy.
Right.
So it's not a matter of for sure someone should do this. It's a matter of knowing what the value of your policy is and treating it like an asset, like any other asset. You'd like to know, what is my policy worth? Could this make sense? Does it make sense now? Or does it make sense, 1, 2, 5 years down the road to consider, selling your policy?
Right. Now, people may be at home watching television,
Yeah.
and they may see an advertisement for a company that does something like what you're talking about.
Sure.
But I know you and I have talked in the past where that's just one company.
Right.
And they're looking for their best interests, obviously, and the consumer is looking out for their best interests.
Right.
You're in a different situation.
Right.
You're going to help represent them to shop them. So why don't we maybe talk about some examples of people you've helped?
Oh, sure, absolutely, yeah. So, and yeah, just to reemphasize, some of the companies you're talking to, they're good companies. They're not bad companies. It's just a lot of them that are advertising, they're actually life settlement buyers. And people don't realize that. And oftentimes without representation, which we provide, you might not know what the value of your policy is. So our goal from a fiduciary standpoint is to help the policy seller maximize the value of their policy and get the most for that policy. So we say we provide exclusive seller representation. So yeah, some examples. This is the best way to make it concrete for people, is just give some examples. Recently, a husband and wife, it was a female, she was 81 years old. She has a life insurance policy that was $1.7 million. And the premiums were approaching about $100,000 a year.
Wow.
So it was getting very expensive. And they were considering whether they want to keep paying that or not. Her life expectancy was still, from their opinion, was still quite long, at 81 years old. Maybe in their minds it was 10 years plus. And they weren't sure they wanted to keep paying these premiums. And they were going to keep going up every year. So they reached out to us, we evaluated the policy, and there was $60,000 in cash value in that policy, about $60,000. After our evaluation and working with them and working with the multiple funders we work with across the country, we were able to provide them a life settlement value of $390,000.
Wow.
So $390,000 versus surrendering it to the life insurance company for $60,000.
That's a huge difference.
So it's a huge difference. And so it worked out really well for them. And in that case, it was obviously the best decision for them because they were really considering just letting the policy go altogether.
Yeah.
One more example let me give. I like to give just to give you a variation of things. A lot of people, they think, term policies, whole life, universal life policies, which kind work? Well, they all have the potential to work, but let me give you an example of a term policy, because if you think about our industry, a lot of people, common comment I get is, well, you can't sell term policies, right? I mean, once the term's over, why would someone want to buy it? And that's a very good point. But a lot of term policies have what are called conversion privileges, in which people can convert their term policy into a whole life or universal life product. So right now we're actually working with a gentleman, he's 74 years old, has a $300,000 term policy, and he's just going to let it go. He's not going to keep it, and he's not going to convert it for himself.
Okay.
He's not going to keep it. So we evaluated it, again, worked with multiple funders, pushed up the offer, and he's going to receive $25,000 for his $300,000 policy. And keep in mind, he is not going to keep this policy, and it's a term policy, and term policies don't have any cash value.
Right.
They have no cash value.
It'd run out
So,
anyway.
so at least he's getting something now. He's getting $25,000 for that policy through a life settlement.
That's amazing. And I can see why it's very important for you to educate financial advisors, because this is another tool in their tool belt when they're advising their clients on their whole portfolio and their future of how they want to have their financial situation set up.
Yeah.
This could be very important for that.
Well, yeah, just project it out and think about, hey, if things come up and we decide, these premiums are getting too expensive, or sometimes the beneficiary passes away and they don't need the policy anymore.
Yeah.
Why not look at a way to maybe monetize that today?
Right.
So it's all about treating life insurance as an asset today versus just about passing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's why it comes down to education, educating financial advisors and educating the public. There's lots of information that Phil can provide for you. His information is on screen. For those of you who are watching this on video, if you're listening to this as a podcast, then it's in the captions, so you can get his information there. But definitely give him a call. If you have a life insurance policy and you're not exactly sure if you want to keep it or what you want to do with it, before you do anything, give him a call, and he can explain the process, evaluate your policy, and see what direction might be the best way for you to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Phil, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right, great.